everyone. Recently we've been featuring a fair bit of new and upcoming ships, and well, honestly, with how many new and upcoming ships Wargaming are pumping out, that's not exactly surprising. Today though, I'm going to feature one of the oldest ships in the game, one of the original ships in the game, one of the probably the first. I mean, they added Montana and the Yamato at the same time, so one of the first tier 10 battleships that were ever added to the game. And that is the IGN tier 10 battleship Yamato. That has never actually been bad. It's kind of impressive. This is one of those ships that has never gotten power crept. And the magic, of course, lies in those 460mm guns. And the 460mm is such an important value in World of Warships because it allows you to overmatch 32mm of armor, which is the standard plating of most battleships. They've added a fair bit of new battleships that have much better armor than that, but these guns have always been a terror, ever since the release. The build, well, the captain I have isn't exactly optimal. I think I have a 16-point captain since this is on my Russian account. I am, however, running Yamato, so I do have access to his special perks and potentially his second wind if I can get the Kraken. But my build is actually pretty amusing. It just shows you how silly Deadeye is. I have spec'd Deadeye and Concealment Expert, and I don't have enough points to spec Fire Prevention. So when I get to choose between Fire Prevention and Deadeye, I prefer to take Deadeye because that's literally how ridiculous that skill is. On the other hand, I don't have access to the Legendary module, and the Yamato Legendary module is actually one of my most recommended modules, one of my most recommended Legendary unique upgrades. But I don't have access to it because, well, I simply haven't unlocked it on this Russian account. So I'm actually running the reload module. So if you're wondering why my gun reload is something like 26 seconds, it's because, well, I'm just running the bog standard reload instead of the legendary. It's actually not bad because, I mean, these guns are just terrifying regardless of how you build them. Unless you build AA. You probably don't want to build Yamato AA. But the guns have always been the bread and butter. I'm looking at the deployment of my team and I'm seeing a lot of ships going to the 8, 9, 10 line. I don't know why people go there still to this day, but there's a ton of ships once again heading there. We do, however, have a Tashkent who's boldly capping B, and since no one appears to be contesting and the enemy 4 destroyers have all been spotted on the minimap, I decide to go to my favorite position on the map, and that is center. I love playing battleships in the center. Like, I used to make a whole series of vids on just central positioning in the battleships, and if the enemy team allows me to park a battleship that has guns like the Yamato in the center of the map, then I usually am going to have a pretty nice game. They do have a carrier, which is obviously a bit of a downer, because if he does decide to focus me, it is going to suck. But on the other hand, it is a Lexington, so we don't have to deal with AP bombers and the like, and it will take him a really, really long time to actually kill me, so I'm willing to take the risks just so I can get some juicy shots on ships from the center. Early on though, they do lose 2 of their destroyers, we lose 1, but our flank on the A side doesn't look that impressive either. But the advantages of positioning, as you can see basically right next to B, is that when the enemy team tries to push into A, you can punish them. In fact, I've done about 60,000 damage to all these ships trying to sail into A, and that's because the enemy has allowed me to park into the center and just take pot shots. I go for the juicy full broadside Moskva, and this won't be the only time I try to kill this Moskva, but I think he's either running incoming fire alert or just paying good attention to incoming shells, because he turns out and dodges my shells entirely. You're gonna see that a fair few times. I love shooting Moskvas because the citadel is gigantic and the average Moskva player really doesn't understand the concept of angling. They just sail in straight lines. So whenever I get an opportunity, I always take a pot shot at the Moskva. But this guy is obviously paying enough attention that he doesn't get himself dev struck. He goes back to giving broadside. I go for another shot, but he does go dark and I do lose vision of him. In the meantime, I try to reposition towards C, see if I can help that one. I don't score any hits, I think, on the Moskva. I think he slowed down and turned in, so he dodged yet another volley. On this flank though, they have Izuma, Minotaur, Borgonia. We have an Östergötland and a Shanbart, but my Georgia is kind of running away. Obviously, Borgonia is a ship you really want to take a fight with in the Yamato. I mentioned that you overmatch 32mm of plating. Well, Borgonia is basically coated in 32mm of plating. Now, you don't want to get caught in close range because of his reload booster, and of course Yamato's Citadel is absolutely gigantic. It's literally one big walking weakness, especially at close range. So as soon as it looks like he's coming around the corner, I already start to preemptively angle my Citadel away from him, so in case his guns decide to turn for me, I don't get caught with my pants down. Yamato rudder shift is extra poor as well, so not worth the risk. He, however, comes out full broadside. I aim just generally center mass. I'm not too confident in Citadeling Borgonia because of that French turtleback, but honestly I don't need to. 6 pens is 23,000 damage, and Borgonia's weakness is the low health pool, so he loses a huge chunk of his health, and now he's kind of stuck in this awkward position where he can either abandon trying to push my destroyer, or he can commit to it, in which case he gives me more broadside. He decides he really wants to kill him. So he's also secondary build, which is extremely questionable. French secondaries are basically garbage. It's a lot of fireworks, but if you look at the actual damage they've dealt to my ship, you'll notice that I basically haven't lost any health at all. So building a ship like Borgonia, or just French ship in general, for secondaries is a complete waste of the potential that the ship offers. His speed, however, allows him to duck behind the island, and I can't get any more shots in on him. I pop spotter plane to see if I can maybe catch this Minotaur, provided he continues pushing the way he is. If I shoot from here, he shouldn't actually get a warning of the incoming shells. It looks like he's slowing down though, still slowing down. I wait a few extra seconds and I do go for the shot, just hoping that maybe he decided to accelerate and will catch the shells, and I can't really shoot the Borgonia either. My prediction was perfectly on the money. The Minotaur decided to accelerate after the destroyer died, and he accelerated right into my blind fired shells. 2 citadels, 30,000 damage because of how high the damage is. That should have been a devastating strike, I think, but those awards are extremely bugged right now. In the meantime, we're down to 6 versus 7. Actually, I think we were 6 versus 8, but picking up the Minotaur has equalized it a bit, and now of course I'm looking to pick up the Borgonia. I make sure to angle. I don't want to trade any of my health away. This guy is basically guaranteed dead. He can't turn away, he's stuck here, so throwing away any of my health would just be foolish. I preemptively angle so he can't get any return damage, and I pick up the second kill on this flank. Carrier comes in. I'm also turning away from him in case he does decide to go for me. I'm staying angled for any potential shells from the Georgia, from the Izumo, and trying to figure out where exactly they've gone. Turns out the Izumo is not pushing for the center. The Izumo has decided to push into B. That means I decide to turn in. The reason why I turn in this way is because, well, my Georgia is on the other side of the map, and he's heading towards the 3 and 4 lines if you look at the minimap. So if I turn the other way, well, I'll be going the same way as my Georgia and not providing any sort of crossfire. The other thing is, I actually don't want to get stuck nosing into the enemy team. I have a lot of health. I have almost my full health pool. No one has really been shooting at me. The carrier hasn't been striking me. I've just been chilling in the middle, farming up 135,000 damage, and I've been playing quite aggressive, but kind of getting away with it. So I want to find a way to put my health pool to use. But if I go nose into the center, something like a Georgia or an Izumo or something can just ram me, or potentially I can get crossfired. So that would be a really poor way of spending all my health. So what I instead do is angle against the entire enemy team and start reversing towards them. This is extremely effective. Well, allows me to completely chunk out the Georgia and delete him from the B camp. But this is very, very effective because the nose citadel weakness is generally easier to hit and more known than the stern citadel weakness for the Yamato. And this also means that if someone does try to rush me, if one of them does try to go for a ram or something, I'm already angled away. They're not going to be able to achieve it. And I am providing a very nice crossfire with my Georgia friend. However, Georgia sadly turns his ship around and starts sailing towards me, so this means that this crossfire that we have that is quite active right now is actively deteriorating. But I really don't want to be sailing away. I keep closing the distance because I really want to get close to them, since I don't have the legendary mod, but I do have the reload mod, as I mentioned. Getting close enough to be able to actually actively citadel these ships will allow me to pump out some serious damage, especially since the Izumo, even though it has a 57mm deck armor, it only has a 32mm nose. I kept the C objective, hoping one of my DDs will go and take it, instead of just kind of loitering in the center and not achieving much, because this is still a loss for us. They have 2 caps, they're contesting B in 6 minutes based on a score timer. They're actually going to win this game. So our Goliath is AFK by the looks of it. I'm not sure how long, I think it's been AFK the entire game. So I just want one of our ships to go and secure the objective. Meanwhile, I aim underneath the turrets on the Izumo, that's where the 32mm plating is, so despite his angling, we still chunk him for almost 20,000 damage. At this point, I'm approaching 200,000 damage at about 11 minutes into the game, but this is still very, very far from a win. Izumo goes behind the island, so this is the opportunity I've been looking for. I can finally turn my ship around and I can push towards them instead of reversing towards them. You want to avoid turns like this in front of any battleship, Izumo, for example, an Izumo. He can easily devastate you. That's how vulnerable the citadel on the ship is. However, the second he puts himself behind the island, because my Tashkent decides to, for some reason, take a fight with him, the second he does that, the second I turn my ship around and I try to put myself in an aggressive position towards them. Because we simply don't have time to waste at this point. And provided my Georgia does chill around where he is, they should struggle to get too many crossfires in on me, because he's kind of creating a crossfire with me. I went for the Moskva again. You note that he once again turned in and he once again dodged the shells. I go for him yet one more time, trying to catch him off guard over the island, but he instantly hits the brakes by the looks of it, and I think my shells land too far ahead. So that guy is obviously paying quite careful attention. I pinged the Georgia, asking him for support. I don't actually, when I ask him for support, I don't want him to push in with me. I just want him to create a crossfire with me, because Georgia is a very fast ship and he can effectively do this. The AFK Goliath gets taken down. Izumo reverses out to try to get some damage on me, and this is a huge mistake. These guns, even though they can't citadel him, still do 26,000 damage. He also gets dropped by the carrier. So I know with my next reload of my front guns, I will be able to take this guy down. There's a shot from the Georgia coming in, gonna see if it actually picks him up. It takes him down to 2 health, which is enough for me to just use one of my guns and instantly turn the rest of my guns to try to pick up the Moskva, who's pushing out quite broadside towards me. He does turn in, once again, and not surprisingly, this guy has been doing it very, very consistently. He shatters and bounces my AP with that Moskva armor, but see, now he's actually in a really, really bad spot. Because that Georgia, you see the kind of triangle crossfire we create. I held my fire. If that Moskva makes the turn, he'll get chunked, and I decide I'm not going to shoot him because he's turning in again. I'm going to shoot the Lenin behind him instead. The Lenin is giving a fair bit of broadside. It's 11,000 damage with one of the turrets and another 20,000 with the second 2 other turrets, so 30,000 damage. Meanwhile, the Moskva, that was so focused on angling against my huge shells, gets caught broadside to the Georgia and gets citadel. This is the advantage of any sort of crossfire. It is so hard for the enemy ships to deal with them, especially since they insist on pushing in. Lenin has an icebreaker, but you see I'm aiming above the icebreaker, the part of the nose that I can overmatch, and I chunk him for about 10,000 damage. Meanwhile, the Moskva is just getting absolutely brutalized by this Georgia. He doesn't really know which way to go. He's been playing well until this point, but he made a critical positional mistake, and he's being punished from every single flank. The carrier finally decides to focus me, but at this point it is far too late, because Moskva pops up full broadside in front of me, and with the Citadel I pick up the Kraken and the second wind talent activates. And that bumps my reload to an absolutely absurd 16 seconds. 16-second reload on 460mm guns. So this Lenin icebreaker isn't gonna protect him against this damage. The Georgia picks up the kill after I chunk him down extremely low. And sadly there's not enough enemy ships really to kill at this point, because I also activate the heal, so I am basically healthy and a complete killing machine at this point. having basically cruiser reload on some of the beefiest guns in the entire game is terrifying. The Lexington pushed up to shorten the time it takes for his planes to strike, but in doing so, with his entire team evaporating, he's actually caught in an extremely awkward position and has to try to find a way to disengage. I think he's still going to try to focus me because, well, I do have a significantly worse AA than the Georgia, but I haven't really been the subject of much HE spam this game, so my AA is all intact, and I have an absurd amount of healing and a very strong torpedo belt, so he's not going to be able to stop this monster when it goes in. In fact, he decides to go for the lower HP Georgia, hoping to maybe pick up the kill and maybe still turn this around, because the game is still quite close. It's 730 to 700 points, so only really a 30-point game. If the Shimakaze can make some magic happen, we might have some success. Meanwhile, while none of my DDs wanted to go cap the C objective, my Parseval has actually gone and done it, so thank God for small favors. Carrier goes in for the strike. Yeah, I mean, it does do a fair bit of damage, but I'm actually still having that Yamato heal ticking. I'm still recovering health, because that perk is so absurd. It's incredibly hard to activate, and usually when it activates, it's kind of in situations like this, when the game is basically completely over. But when you do activate it, especially on a ship like the Yamato, it's so hard to deal with the ship. It's just so hard to deal with it. Yeah, the ship is already a bully thanks to the guns, but the Yamato just makes it even more absurd. He goes in for yet another strike, but at this point I'm actually going to pick up another achievement that you don't see too often on the Yamato. And, well, can I actually get a plane kill? There we go. AA Defense Expert, because I've shot down over 35 planes in my Yamato at this point. He did try to take some harassment on me while I was playing that central position. I aim for the flat broadside, and in classic World of Warships fashion, only 2 shells land, the rest of the 4 shells go straight into the water, because clearly we can't hit a full broadside carrier at 5 kilometers. Don't ask me how that works. Shells landing short has been an issue in the game for some time. At this point I'm up at 297,000 damage, and I know I'm going to be able to catch up to this carrier, because I really, not only do I want to pick up the kill and kill the CV, but I also want to bump this damage up over 300,000. And just goes to show that, well, you don't really need fire prevention, and you don't even need the legendary module to absolutely brutalize enemy ships in the Yamato. This ship, even to this day, is still an absolute monster. I catch him quite broadside. I figured, you know what, surely I can citadel him. And much to my surprise, he actually shatters 2 of the shells. I'm not sure how that worked. It must have been some sort of pinned the torpedo belt and then bounced on an internal plate or something. But the citadel, the reload is so stupidly fast that 16 seconds later I go straight for the booty, overmatch him, citadel him, and pick up the kill. 329,000 damage, AA Defense Expert, Confederate Kraken, High Caliber. 43 planes shot down, only 104 hits, but with these guns you don't really need a whole lot more than that. 8 citadels and 3 cap resets. Amusingly, set a ship on fire as well, probably thanks to those secondary hits, because I generally never really load HE in the Yamato, unless it's a very, very special case. Team score wise, 3,500 base XP, which is obviously a very strong value to get. Breaking 3,000 is already a good game. 3.5k is generally a pretty excellent game. Especially considering we didn't really do much damage to any of the destroyers. We didn't get to shoot them once, so the damage is basically just deleting cruisers and battleships left, right and center. Special mention to my Georgia for staying alive and helping provide that crossfire, because it did kind of make that final push, it made it work and limited the chance of something like a Moskva just nose in trying to go for a ram or something similar. Crossfires are so strong in this game. In fact, if you look at any competitive games like King of the Sea, you'll notice that the teams always put themselves in a position where that if you try to push into them, you'll push into a crossfire. For this exact reason. It is such a potent tool. Detailed report wise, Our potential damage is actually hilariously low at only 500,000, and considering how aggressive we played, we basically just parked in the center. We played central position from start to finish. The enemy team just decided, you know what, we're not gonna shoot that guy with the 460mm guns that's murdering everyone. No, we're just gonna ignore him and see what happens. Well, this is kind of what happens. AA defense damage 63,000, surprisingly high actually, and the damage received, well, a fair bit of everything, but nothing life-threatening, especially with the Yamato ability. I won't bother showing you guys the build, because it is the standard build. I've been probably running the same Yamato build for ages. Normally, I just run the legendary mod instead of the reload mod, and of course, I highly recommend fire prevention. The only reason I don't have it here is because this captain is like 16 points, because this is my Russian account. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you're new players or you're grinding the Yamato or something and you're worried that this ship has been power crept, a lot of the ships in World of Warships have been power crept, but the Yamato is still an absolute beast. It is still one of my favorite battleships in the entire game, because those guns are just so goddamn filthy. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you guys enjoyed it.